So let's go ahead and do a little bit more work with this process. We can see that line specifically was the rejection, and this line specifically was the approval. So we have validation that what we thought happened in the process actually did. So what if instead of sending a rejection notification to the hiring manager, we actually made this process a little bit more dynamic and gave the hiring manager an opportunity to immediately uh, deal with that rejection. So let's go ahead and change this process on the fly. Let's uh, reconnect that path from the notify hiring manager rejection back to the hiring manager step at the beginning so that we can give the hiring manager an opportunity to address that right away. So let's go ahead and run this process again right after we've changed it. We can run it immediately after we change it. We don't have to wait for any code to be generated. We can simply run it right away. Let's go ahead and step through this process again and submit another request. And we can see that once the manager submits the request, it proceeds through the process. Because it was a request for a new position, the general manager needs to approve it. The general manager reviews that request, rejects it because it's a full-time request. And now we can see that it proceeded through the process and looped back to the beginning to the hiring manager. So now that we're sitting at the hiring manager step, let's see what we can do about adjusting the request. First of all, the hiring manager now sees this activity but doesn't have any additional information about what the general manager is thinking or what the general manager did. So let's improve that a bit. Let's go back to the designer perspective and drill down into the submit job requisition activity. We can see that it's implemented as a human service that has a UI. These yellow boxes are the screens. We can see that there's that initial screen that we're used to seeing, the create job requisition screen. If it is an existing request, it'll go to that screen. If it's a new request, it'll go to the other screen. So let's improve this first screen to give them more information about what the general manager might have been thinking. We can see in the visual palette over here that we have the ability to drag and drop various UI controls onto the user interface screen. We also have in this visual palette a list of all of the process data. So for instance, we could grab that process data element, that general manager approval variable that is flowing through each instance of the process, and just drag and drop that process data onto the screen, and it'll create the appropriate UI element. So let's go ahead and put that in a part of the screen. Like we can play a process at any time, we can run any individual activity at any time. And so that we can change the screen repeatedly, let's go ahead and drag and drop that line that proceeds through these screens. That line is actually the path that gets taken when the user clicks the next button. And let's drag and drop that path to loop back to the screen so that every time we hit that next button, it'll essentially refresh the screen and let us change the screen repeatedly. So let's go ahead and click next, and now we can see that it picks up the changes that we've made to the user interface. We can see that at this point the general manager has rejected it. Let's go ahead and drag and drop a little bit more process data onto the screen. I wonder what the general manager was thinking. Let's grab the comments onto the screen. Let's save that UI change and refresh the screen just by hitting next, because we loop back that connection to the screen. We can see the general manager's comments are hiring freeze, so please use something. Not quite enough space. Let's change that a little bit, give it a little bit more real estate. We'll save it and revisit the screen and see that our changes are immediately available. Now it's a bit wider. The general manager might have more comments down the road, so let's make this even a little bit bigger and see if that UI change takes effect as well. So it's a hiring freeze, so please use part-time help. Alright, so now we have the screen enhanced enough so that we can get more information about what the hiring manager needs to do to react to the general manager's rejection. So let's go ahead and proceed. Let's change this connection in the screen to back to where it was so that we can proceed through the screen flow and subsequently through the process. So let's go ahead and save this, and now we can revisit that screen. When we hit next, it'll proceed through the screen flow. Now that we know the general manager's thoughts, we're going to change it from full-time to part-time. And it proceeds through to the next screen, which is the review screen, and we'll submit that step in the activity. Let's switch back to the inspector view so that we can see what's going on in the process. We can see the process has proceeded to the GM review step, and now when the general manager reviews it, the general manager ought to be able to see that the hiring manager has reacted to their comments, changed it to part-time, and now the general manager can feel comfortable in approving this request. And we've proceeded through the process. So we successfully changed the flow of the process and also changed the user experience in the user interface screens for that first activity. So we've changed high level and lower level details in the process on the fly. Let's go ahead and take a look at what the end user experience would look like in the process portal. So we have a lightweight web application called the Lombardi Process Portal that works with any business process out of the box. So with zero effort and zero development time, we can deploy a process and have it in the hands of end users very quickly. So since this portal works with any process out of the box, let's take a look at how it looks for an end user that might want to create a new position requisition. So by default, we have the ability to create new process instances. In this case, they're job requisitions. I'll create 3 of them. Once we create 3 of them, we can see they show up in the inbox of activities awaiting the attention of whoever happens to be logged on. We're logged on as TW admin. Because we're logged on as TW_admin, we will be able to play the role of both the hiring manager and the general manager without having to log off and log back on again. Normally we would assign user groups to different roles so that we would force a particular type of user to log on. But for convenience sake, as we're stepping through here, we'll just be a super user so we can step through this process more quickly. Let's go ahead and open up one of these activities. We can see that it tells us the name of the process, HR open new position. It also tells us the tasks that we're waiting at, and has some other information that we'll cover in a few minutes. So let's go ahead and work with this task. We can see first of all that it's very easy to see where we are in the process. There's the same process diagram that we saw at design time is the same process diagram that end users see, so that we have consistency and clarity on where we are in the process. We can claim this activity in the portal. You'll see that the way that the end user experience works in the process portal, it's even more efficient and easier to step through the process. We can simply use the screens, and once we're done using the screens, they go away and it shows us where we are in the process. We'll refresh the screen to see what the next activity is. We can see in the diagram that we've proceeded from the first step to the second step, and now the general manager needs to claim this activity and take action on it. It'll tell them that the task will be assigned to them. Since it's a full-time request, we're going to go ahead and reject this. And now we can see it loops back to the beginning. So let's refresh the web browser and see what the next activity is. We'll change it to part-time since now we see the comments of the general manager that we need to use part-time help due to the hiring freeze. We'll refresh and see where the process is proceeded to. Now the GM has the ability to review. Seeing a part-time request, we're going to approve it. And now we see that there are no more highlighted activities in the diagram. We've essentially completed this request, this process instance, and we can see validation of that right here, that the process instance is completed, that this job hiring request is completed. Let's take a look at, and you can see here that that now there are only 2 activities waiting our attention, not 3. Let's go ahead and create a new one quickly, and another new one, and then we'll go ahead and step through this activity until it reaches the general manager review, and we'll leave it there. So now we have several activities, 3 of which are at the hiring manager step and 1 which is at the general manager review step. Let's review my performance. We have scoreboards that work out of the box with any process that you built. So they tap into the performance data that is automatically tracked about the process, and display useful scoreboards about the health of the process and the progress and the performance. So we can see that some tasks are at risk and some are overdue. Let me go ahead and create another fresh request, and once we create that fresh request, we'll go ahead and revisit that scoreboard, and we can see that now we have some requests, some instances of the process that are on track, at risk, and overdue. How does it calculate this? Let's take a closer look at the process diagram. There's actually property sheets that allow you to configure the behavior of a process application. So one of the things that we configure in this property sheet are things like due dates. And what we've done for this quick start tutorial process is configure the due dates specifically. For the first activity, the due date is set to 1 minute so that we have an easy way to see the progress and the variety of the scoreboards. And for the general manager review new position step, we've by default set the due date to 5 minutes. So the first activity is set to 1 minute, the second activity is set to 5 minutes, and just in the time that it took me to explain how we configure the due dates, which helps us understand how these scoreboards are calculated, things have aged enough so that our scoreboard has actually changed. So now we can see that there's more activities that have gone on long enough for more to be overdue. So if I, to show that this is dynamic, if I create a new request and therefore introduce a new fresh activity into the system, when I visit my performance, I can see that it has refreshed as well to reflect the fact that there are some fresh new activities in there. We can see that there's not only a My Performance scoreboard, but also a My Team Performance scoreboard. In the My Team Performance scoreboard, we can see not only the percentage of tasks that are on track, at risk, and overdue, but we can also see when tasks will go overdue. We have our task list painted, color-coded for on track, at risk, and overdue. And we can see the performance and workload of the team. If we had more team members, that would be more interesting to look at. We can see the process. We can see that in My Performance scoreboard, we also have that when tasks will go overdue, the task list color-coded for overdue, at risk, and on track. And we have My Performance versus the team average and My Performance trend. So some really good information to help people understand the health of the process and their participation in the process. The process performance scoreboard gives a view of all work going through the process, regardless of individuals or teams. So it's a summary view. We can see the aggregate volume and velocity of work going through the system broken down between activities. So we can see the total amount of work going through the submit job requisition activity and the GM review new position activity. And we can drill down on those as well. So if we drill down on the GM review activity, we can see that there's currently 1 activity awaiting the general manager's attention, and that activity is on track. If we drill down on the at-risk activities, we can see we have 1 that's at the submit job requisition step. That at-risk category is dynamically calculated by the Webster Lombardi Edition engine based upon trending information over time. And then we can see we have 4 overdue activities if we click on that overdue section.